Girl, it's week 14. FanDuel tight end. Let's do this. Yeah, 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 yeah. Walk the plank, Jason. Walk the plank.
That's what I feel like I'm doing every week.
Yeah, whenever I'm hosting, you're just walking the plank, poking you like you're not going fast enough with your hands tied. So I'm poking you, and you fall, and then you fall like to the side, and then a crocodile eats you.
Yeah, that's fair. That's what I feel like.
Yeah, you should. But anyway, week 14, I think we got some pretty interesting tight ends here. As far as cash games go, Tyler Eifert at 6,700. Not an optimal price for what we're trying to do this week, but I still think it's very viable, especially with Dalton's price. So what are you looking at in this matchup?
Yeah, there's two different ways you can go with this week. I think obviously we're looking to really use Bell and Johnson as a pay up option on FanDuel. And you look at the Dalton or Luck range in cash. But I think with enough value wideouts this week, there's a lot of cheap guys you can go with. Tyler Eifert can kind of fit in, or maybe you're doing a little bit different. So he's a GPP play as well, but great matchup against Cleveland. I'm not really worried about just having two targets last week. I'm sure many found that discouraging, but back-to-back games with a receiving touchdown is kind of really the only viable red zone target, I feel like, in that Cincinnati passing game. Cleveland, 38% DVOA against tight ends, allowing nearly 15 FanDuel points per game. I like Eifert. I like pairing him with Dalton. I like rolling him solo. There's a lot of upside here.
Well, if they're anything like the Redskins, the Redskins are by far the worst red zone team in the league. They could just start throwing goal line fades to Andrew Hawkins. I think that's a really intelligent way to do things, throwing goal line fades to your smallest speed receiver. I think that's really...
Philly did that too with Aguilar. So
it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Stop! It's so annoying to watch, isn't it? Maybe it's just
it's fairly simple. No, it's common sense at this point.
How do you get to the NFL and not under I never even coached football. I know you're not supposed to throw goal line fades to the Deshaun Jackson. That doesn't make any sense. He's not a
Russ. The NFL is filled with a lot of not smart
5'10".
people.
He's 5'10". He's a great receiver, but he's not. I'd rather you throw a goal line fade to Pierre Garçon than Deshaun Jackson. Anyway, yes. Luckily for us, the Bengals are very smart with their red zone usage. They love throwing to Tyler Eifert, who's a tremendous weapon down there. Love this matchup. Discussing quite a bit this week. Zach Ertz, 5,700 against the Redskins. His price is very friendly here, I think, for what he's done. Obviously, been a target hog of late. Jordan Matthews may or may not be back, but I doubt he plays, all the regular snaps he would. What are you looking at against this Redskins team?
Yeah, the price is solid coming off a big week. And as you mentioned, just targets galore, 47 over the last 5 weeks. So Carson Wentz is getting him the ball, as we talked about in your podcast. Given the fact that the offensive line hasn't really been good, Zach Ertz has become more of a safety blanket for Wentz over the last few games. That wasn't the case earlier in the season, obviously, when he was healthy. But great matchup here. Washington's allowing the most fantasy points to opposing tight ends over the last 5 weeks, 8th on the entire season. Not a tremendous price jump from last week. I think he's a viable kind of mid-range option. I think if you are really diving down at tight end this week, Vernon Davis is there as a decent punt. He's about 1,000 cheaper. So I think if you are punting tight end this week, Vernon Davis is probably the guy you can look to do it with in cash. Yeah. And if you have that extra salary, I do like playing Ertz because there is no luxury here of Ladarius Green. He's 100 more than Ertz. So there's no real cheap play with that hopeful home run bust upside. Ertz is relatively solid, especially with the target share that he's got going on right now.
I think Vernon Davis is a really interesting call. He's, the last few years have been really rough. He had that 13 receiving touchdown season 3 years ago. last 2 years ago in San Francisco was ugly, and then he'd just been dropping balls in Denver and all those random places last year. Really turned it around this year. He actually looks really good in this offense, so I like that call a lot. Darius Green as a GPP play. I think he's in here because that price, like you mentioned, against the Bills. Sketchy times for the Steelers offense on the road, I think, other than Le'Veon.
Yeah, I mean, Bell's your safest bet. Ladarius Green isn't a good spot, especially if, these corners are kind of hit and miss for Buffalo, but if they, obviously easier said than done, but if they can limit Brown and Eli Rogers, I think there's a decent chance that Ladarius Green can break out a few big plays. But as we've seen, I mean, I don't think we can count on 11 targets like we saw last week. I think he is just going to be one of those boomer bust threats, just given the fact that he's only on the field about half the time. But this is a good matchup here. I mean, Buffalo's led the second most fantasy points to tight ends over the last 5 weeks, 14.5% DVOA. So still a relatively healthy total there for Pittsburgh, despite Big Ben being on the road. But I think a lot of that has to do with probably going to be a pretty good day for Le'Veon Bell. But I like Green in tournaments, but I think the price, I can't quite roll that in cash.
Fair. The last one here, very interesting in my opinion, what to do with him. He's kind of had a roller coaster season with his snaps, with his fantasy points, with his role in the offense. It's just been all over the place. Wouldn't be Kobe Fleener if, all this craziness wouldn't be surrounding him. So what are you looking at with him, with Josh Hill now out, Buccaneers versus the Saints?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of walking the plank, I mean, that's how you feel like when you're putting Kobe Fleener into a lineup. But 5,300, he's going to be low owned this week. I don't think people are going to jump on him at all. I think Vernon Davis is going to be that popular play. I think Ertz and Green will suck up ownership a couple $100 more. But as you pointed out, I mean, Josh Hill going to miss the rest of the year. That means snaps towards Kobe Fleener, which, Hill was cutting into over the last 5 or 6 weeks. Fleener has these random big games, and I think this is a game that could be kind of sneaky. And obviously, we're still dealing with Breeze and his, road splits, which kind of limits potential around him at times. I think this is actually a decent match. I mean, Tampa allowed the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends over the last 5 weeks. I think the rankings are a little bit, misleading given the fact that they haven't played too many talented tight ends. So Fleener sneaky. I think overall, you look at this pass-happy offense, there is touchdown upside. I mean, this guy's still using the red zone quite a bit despite the limited snaps over the last few weeks.
Are you trying to say Levine Toilolo is not a talented tight end? I'm just trying to get you on the record here.
Nah, he's okay.
Okay. I'll let him know. I mean, I think this is really what we've distilled it down to for this week. I mean, I like Jimmy Graham as well. I'm not. What's his price here? Is he more expensive?
No, he's around Tyler Eifert.
Okay.
Graham's a fine play as well.
Yeah, I think he's just kind of like, I think Eifert is the better play. I just would throw Graham in there as another pay up option potentially. But other than that, I mean, these are the guys you mentioned: Vernon Davis, Kobe Fleener, interesting tournament guy. Is there anything else you want to throw in there?
No, I don't think so. I mean, this is probably a good contrarian position this week to take a chance on. I don't know how many people are going to be paying up for Graham and Eifert, given the fact that line of construction is going to be fairly tough. As we pointed out, I think a lot of people will punt with Vernon Davis, or, maybe get a couple people that chase Ladarius Green. So it's a good week to kind of mix and match tight ends, I feel like, if you're making multiple lineups.
Certainly. As always, thanks for tuning in. We will see you guys next week. If you want to check out this week's stuff, certainly head over to dailyfantasycafe.com, read Jason's article. If you like what we're doing on the YouTube page, give us a like and subscribe. Write a little ditty in the comments there about how much you're winning, or how you're angry that we're deceiving people by not projecting 5 points. You can certainly get mad at us for that. That is my fault that I can't find all the players that are going to score 25 points this weekend. I'm sorry. Anyhow, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.